Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into a sermon today, and this one is by Pastor John Isaias Moore.
Okay.
It really got me thinking, honestly.
Oh, yeah. What was it about?
It's about these, classic Christian ideas of brokenness and humility and serving others.
Right.
But the way he ties all that into spiritual power, that's what really kind of blew my mind.
Interesting. So how does he, how does he approach that?
Well, he starts with this metaphor of a seed.
Oh, okay.
You know, how it has to die to bear fruit.
Yeah, that's a pretty common one.
It is, but he doesn't just leave it at that surface level,
Right.
He really makes you think about what sacrificing your ego, your pride, what that really means for your life.
Yeah, I can see how that would be powerful. Like, what are the real implications of that?
Exactly. And he makes it so relatable, too. He talks about, the actual process of farming, different planting seasons. It's okay, I get that we're supposed to die to self and all that, but what does that actually look like, on a Tuesday afternoon?
Right. He's bringing it down to earth.
Totally. And he uses these really great examples from the Bible, too. Remember how the disciples were always, competing with each other?
Oh, yeah.
Always trying to be the most important one?
Yeah, always jockeying for position.
Exactly. He uses that to show how, in Christianity, it's almost like the opposite of what we normally think.
How so?
Well, to be truly great, you kind of have to embrace being less important, putting others first.
I see what you mean. That's pretty counterintuitive.
It is.
Yeah.
But then he brings up this whole other idea that I found really fascinating. Unbrokenness.
Unbrokenness.
Yeah, it's almost like he's diagnosing us,
Okay, what do you mean?
He says that a lot of times our pride and ego, that unbrokenness, it's the biggest thing that gets in the way of God actually working in our lives.
Yeah.
Because we think we have it all figured out already, so we're not open to changing, to growing.
Yeah, that makes sense. If you think you're already perfect.
Exactly. And he's not afraid to get really specific either. He gives examples like feeling too important to even go to church.
Oh, wow.
Or being so self-conscious that you can't even worship freely.
Yeah, I think we've all been there at some point.
Oh, for sure. And it really makes you think, okay, if that unbrokenness is the problem, is the solution to try to be broken.
Well, he does go there. He talks about actually surrendering to being broken.
Yeah, and he even compares modern Christianity to the early church.
Oh, really? What does he say?
He straight up asks, what is the problem today?
Yeah.
And he doesn't really answer it directly, but he's making you think.
Definitely.
And then he starts talking about these amazing people from the early church.
Okay, like who?
Like Stephen, remember him?
Was he one of the disciples?
He was a deacon.
Yeah.
But he was incredibly bold, preaching even when people were threatening him.
Wow. That takes guts.
Right. And then there were these 3 little girls.
Little girls?
Yeah. They had the gift of prophecy.
That's incredible.
Imagine that kind of faith, at that age.
Yeah, that's powerful.
And of course, he talks about Paul.
Oh, yeah. Paul. Quite a story, right.
Went from persecuting Christians to being this huge leader in the church.
Really makes you think about transformation, doesn't it?
Absolutely. So we have Stephen, these young girls, Paul, all these different people with different backgrounds, but they were all willing to be used by God.
Right, regardless of their circumstances.
Exactly. And then to illustrate this even more, he brings up the story of King David.
Oh, David.
Dancing before the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, yeah, I remember that story. That was something else.
It wasn't just any dance either. He was so overwhelmed with joy, with gratitude, he was dancing like nobody was watching.
Except someone was.
Exactly. And this woman, she sees him and she's horrified.
Why? What was wrong with his dancing?
Well, to her, it was just completely inappropriate.
Oh, not dignified enough for a king.
Exactly. It's she's representing that unbrokenness that we were talking about before,
Interesting.
She's so focused on outward appearances, on what other people think.
I see. And how did David react?
Oh, his response is so great. He's basically look, I was a humble shepherd before God raised me up as king. I'm not going to be ashamed to express my devotion.
Wow. That's powerful.
There's such freedom in that, He's not bound by what other people think, and that's what lets him experience this incredible connection with God.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I think that's really the heart of what Pastor Moore's saying. Brokenness leads to freedom. But that unbrokenness, clinging to our ego and pride, that keeps us trapped.
Trapped in what?
Trapped in self-importance and insecurity,
Yeah, I get it. So by being humble, by understanding that our worth comes from God and not like our status or whatever.
Exactly. That's how we can experience true spiritual power. It's a pretty powerful idea, right? Like trading in, I don't know, a little hand tool for something way more powerful.
It really is.
Yeah.
And he's not just, saying be humble and leaving it at that. He actually gives some pretty practical advice.
Oh, yeah. What kind of advice?
Well, he talks about different areas where we might need to, let go of our pride and let God work.
Okay, I'm curious. What are some of those areas?
Well, for some people, it might be about facing their fears. Like actually stepping out and doing something that scares them because they know it's what God's calling them to do.
That's a good one. I know I have a few fears I've been avoiding.
For others, it might be about confronting their weaknesses, like admitting they don't have it all together and asking for help.
Yeah, that can be tough, but it's so important.
And for some, it might be about letting go of past hurts, forgiving people who have wronged them, or even forgiving themselves for their own mistakes.
That's huge. Holding on to those hurts, it just eats you up inside.
It really does. And it blocks us from receiving God's grace.
And sometimes I think it's just about getting out of our comfort zones. Being willing to serve others in ways that we never thought we could.
Absolutely. It's not just about this, internal transformation.
Yeah.
It's about putting our faith into action.
Yeah, actually doing something, making a difference in the world.
Exactly. And I think that's where we really see the power of brokenness in action. It's not just about us feeling bad about ourselves, It's about using those experiences to become more compassionate, more loving, more like Jesus.
That's good. It's not just about us.
Right. It's about letting God use our brokenness to bring healing to others, to bring hope to the world.
This is really making me think. And you know what? I think he also kind of touched on this, but...
What's that?
It's not just a one-time thing, is it? This whole brokenness thing.
Oh, definitely not. It's a process.
We don't just get broken once and then we're good.
Right. It's something we have to keep coming back to, keep checking ourselves.
Yeah, am I letting pride get in the way? Am I too worried about what other people think?
Those are tough questions.
Yeah.
But they're the ones that really matter.
They are. And thinking about all this, it really feels relevant to, what's going on in the world right now,
Oh, yeah, totally. How so?
Well, we're just bombarded with these messages about success, achievement, you got to be the best, got to get ahead.
I know what you mean. It's all about self-promotion.
Right. And it's easy to get sucked into that, to forget what really matters.
It's almost like Pastor Moore's message is countercultural in a way.
Oh, yeah, I totally agree.
Like in a society that's all about strength and independence. He's saying, no, embrace vulnerability, depend on God, serve others.
It's a radical idea.
It is, but it's also incredibly powerful.
It really is. He's saying true fulfillment. It doesn't come from what we accomplish on our own.
Right.
It comes from letting God work through us.
Exactly. From surrendering to something bigger than ourselves.
So as we're kind of wrapping up our deep dive here, it's clear that this message of brokenness and humility and service, it's not just some nice idea.
Definitely not.
It's a challenge.
It's a way of life.
And it's incredibly rewarding.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that real power, it doesn't come from being in control.
Nope.
It comes from surrendering to God.
Letting him lead.
And letting him use us to make a difference in the world.
That's the key. Making a difference.
So as we go about our week,
yeah,
I think it's worth thinking about this.
What's that?
What area of my life needs to be broken so I can experience more growth, more purpose?
That's a good question to sit with for a while.
Yeah, that's a good question. It kind of makes me honestly a little nervous.
Oh, yeah. Why is that?
Just thinking about what if those places that need to be broken, what if those are things I don't really want to deal with,
Yeah, I get that. It can be scary to face those parts of ourselves.
It is.
But I don't think it means we have to constantly put ourselves down or anything like that.
Okay, good. Because I don't want to do
It's more about admitting that we need God, and letting him work in those tough places.
Wait, surrendering to that, not just beating myself up.
Exactly. And trusting that God can use those broken places for good, even if they feel scary or painful.
Yeah, like they say, God doesn't waste our pain.
Exactly. He can take even the toughest parts of our lives and use them to help us grow, to make us stronger, to give us purpose.
Man, this whole deep dive has really got me thinking about my faith in a new way.
Oh, yeah. How so?
It's I always thought of humility and service as, I don't know, weaknesses, I guess.
Yeah, it's easy to see it that way.
But now I'm seeing them as paths to something better,
To what?
a deeper connection with God, a life with more meaning.
Yeah, that's powerful. And it goes back to what we were talking about before, real spiritual power isn't about controlling everything or getting everyone to notice us. It's about surrendering, letting God lead.
And then letting him use us to, make a difference.
Exactly. To bring some good into the world.
So as we wrap things up here,
Mm-hmm.
I want to encourage you, everyone listening,
Yeah.
just sit with this for a little while.
With what?
With everything we've been talking about today, let it challenge you a little bit.
Don't just let it go in one ear and out the other.
Exactly. Ask yourself those hard questions, like, where's my pride getting in the way?
Mm-hmm.
Am I resisting this whole idea of being broken? And most importantly,
What's that?
how can I use this idea of humility, of serving others? How can I use it to grow?
To become more of who you're meant to be.
Yes, exactly. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive, everyone.
It's been great exploring this with you. Keep seeking, keep growing, and we'll see you next time.
Welcome back, everybody. We're diving into a sermon today, and this one is by Pastor John Azias Moore.
Okay.
It really got me thinking, honestly.
Oh, yeah. What was it about?
It's about these, classic Christian ideas of brokenness and humility and serving others.
Right.
But the way he ties all that into spiritual power, that's what really kind of blew my mind.
Interesting. So how does he, how does he approach that?
Well, he starts with this metaphor of a seed.
Oh, okay.
How it has to die to bear fruit.
Yeah, that's a pretty common one.
It is, but he doesn't just leave it at that surface level,
Right.
He really makes you think about what sacrificing your ego, your pride, what that really means for your life.
Yeah, I can see how that would be powerful.
Mm-hmm.
What are the real implications of that?
Exactly. And he makes it so relatable, too. He talks about, the actual process of farming, different planting seasons. It's okay, I get that we're supposed to die to self and all.